we want it on tape, so we have to use the mic.
I'm David Lingard. Thanks, Brian, for an interesting talk. So here's an argument I'd like to hear your kind of thoughts on from Denmark, and it addresses the gentleman from before, that there's a pragmatic argument saying that the relation or the liaison between the Danish state and church is actually what keeps religion at bay in Denmark. It's what keeps it low. Once you introduce choice and you introduce competition, as they have it in the US, into the religious market, that's where you see the kind of resurgence, resuscitation of religion in the public sphere. So I don't know what the experiences are from Sweden. They're interesting to hear for us, but that's the kind of fear from many kind of non-religious people, that if you introduce a separation of church and state, you actually introduce competition, heat, maybe choice into the religious market in a way that will actually kind of see more religion in the public sphere. What's your thoughts on that kind of pragmatic argument? It's a pragmatic argument actually for keeping the church and state liaised, because it keeps the level of religion in general society low.
Well, it's an argument you often hear in the debate, that if we separate church and state and all religions are becoming free on the market and has to compete on the souls on the market, we will have a situation as in the USA. But you could also argue that we would have a situation as in France, where religion not has the same effects in the public realm. And you also see a quite clear cut between church and state in France as well, and probably even more than in the United States. You also see a clear difference between church and state in Czechoslovakia. When the Czechoslovakia was becoming free, they also made clear that they didn't want a church state, or that they didn't want an official church, and you do not see religion playing any role in public debate in Czechoslovakia, but both in Czech and in Slovakia today.
What are the trends in Sweden?
In Sweden,
10 years, has anything happened in Sweden with that? Because I'm
no.
closer.
I think in Sweden thing has gone as they did before. They have less members in the national church, and perhaps you see from time to time priests try to influence the ethical, political agenda in some ways, but I think it's not more than you see in Denmark, as it is now. In Norway, you also discuss to do the same as they have done in Sweden. They haven't taken any decisions about this, but both in the church and among political parties, they want to implement the same ideas as the Swedish government did 10 years ago.
Yeah, we're going to have a debate on that later today, actually, with a representative from both Norway and Sweden, and also one from Finland who just popped in, so we can have a debate on Scandinavia and church-state separation in other countries.
I just want to say that Lindhardt, was it?
Sorry?
Lindhardt, Mr. Lindhardt?
Yes.
Yeah. Misinterpreted what I said in the context of the UK.
It wasn't you, it was the gentleman before you.
Oh, I'm sorry. But in the UK, I think although the established church is weaker than it is in Denmark, its remaining role in the state enlarges that of religion as a whole. Because it's not so strong, it does ally with other Christian groups, other minority religions, but they also gain influence through the fact that there are bishops sitting in the House of Lords who can, present themselves as standing for the whole religious community and do so.
Excuse me. I recently moved about 2 years ago from the United States to Sweden, and had an interesting thing happen to me. Actually, I was late coming here yesterday because I had to go to the graduation or the end of school for my kids. And this is the second one I've been to, so I understood a little bit more of what the priest was talking about and things like that. And I found it extremely interesting that no religious connotations really came up in it. It's how nice people are, how good it is to get everybody together, so forth and so on. Thank you all for coming. The next thing that happened is the kids get up and do a song. And the song was Imagine by John Lennon. And I almost broke out in laughter because I couldn't imagine the mayhem that would have ensued if that had been, some states in the United States. And I was wondering, how did Sweden get to this point where it really is just a place for people to have weddings, funerals, get together for common events, and has become a very calm and relaxing place to be? How did Sweden get to that, and how can other places do the same thing?
Well, I think the main point is the Westphalian Peace, actually, that we have the system with one church and one people in the Northwest European countries have made it a very, religion has not been a conflictual aspect before the last 150 to 100 years. And when it's not a place for conflict, people do not care that much about it. They do care about it, but they do not use it actively in their identity construction, or they do not use it actively in formulation of political ideas or anything else.
But how do they, nobody gives up power willingly.
No.
So, but the church really has almost no power.
Or you could say that the church has very much power, but it does not use it.
And how is that possible?
I think many clergymen are aware of, if they become too political, too controversial, people will turn their back against the church, and they would rather embrace all the people. That's the idea in the Nordic countries. They will rather embrace people being less controversial than being controversial and outspoken and not embracing all people.
So is that what you see in Denmark in cases like the one we had in Warsons Kirke recently with a priest who...
Well, you see more and more of this in Denmark.
Created quite a debate because some were for and some were against. So that kind of helped the separation of church and state debate, I think.
But you have always had situations like that where priests actively taking sides in important issues. You also had it in the 30s where you had priests who were either for Jews and or social democrats or communists or what you have, and you also had priests who were anti-Semitic. And
hello, I'm Guy. I'm from France. I'd just like to make a few comments on the situation in France. When I hear how secular countries like Denmark and Japan are, I'm still a little bit surprised, because when I hear there's an established church, for example, in Denmark, to somebody like me in France, it's a very alien concept that there could be a church established linked to the state. We had a law separating church and states in 1905, which is quite a long time. In France, when you get married, you have to get married at the city hall first. You cannot get married religiously first, it's illegal. And in the public space, virtually nobody talks about religion. Politicians keep away from religion, even when they are religious, because there's a number of people who are religious. They very rarely mention religion, or they believe in God or whatever. It's considered not the right practice. So I had a hard time understanding how can be secular and at the same time having a lot of trappings of religion in the public life. So that's the comment I wanted to make.
But I also think that it's an illusion that Denmark is a secularist. But you can read our constitution and you can see for yourself that it's not a secularist country at all. You could say that the population are probably secularist-minded, but it's another level in this secularist discussion. But as a state, the Danish state is not secularist at all.
To bring up the hot topic is how do you think about the upcoming Islam religion? Should Denmark change something, or what aspect should they specifically embrace to keep the dangers of Islam out?
Well, if we should use the same strategy towards Islam as we have done towards Christianity, we should, of course, embrace them and control Islam, making a lot of institutions, state-controlled institutions, state-controlled clergymen in Islam, and then we would probably have the same situation as with Christianity. It would be a very calm Islam in Denmark. So if we use that strategy, we would not have much conflict, I think. But it's of course not possible to do that in Denmark. But I think you will see more and more legislation that try to integrate Islam in Denmark in somehow, both in education, where you probably will have Islam at the curriculum. You already have that. You will probably have see that legislation that give the possibility for Islam to collect tax in somehow, as you do in Sweden and Norway, as far as I remember. And you probably other ways to help Islam being integrated in some kind of a religious state system in Denmark, as you have with the Evangelical Lutheran Church. And not only Islam, but also Buddhism and Hinduism and all other kinds of religions. I think that would be the future. Although you see in Parliament today there are many parties against it, but many young politicians, both in right and left, not taking Danish People's Party in mind, are actually for more integration with religions.
Dennis from the Danish Humanists. Another explanation for why Danish priests or Scandinavian priests might be, why we have the experience with them as we have, that they don't really believe that much, is that they are very well educated. Danish priests have 6 years of university studies. And we all know that from studies that the more people read, the more educated they get, the less they believe. If you compare that to the United States, priests and preachers there are not very well educated. So that's probably one of the reasons why we experience that Danish priests don't talk much about God, because they don't really believe much in it. Would you agree with that?
I haven't seen any analysis of Danish priests believing in God or not, so I'm not sure.
Well, we have many instances actually of Danish priests who do not believe in God,
the case of gospel,
don't believe in God, and they still preach. Yeah. That's quite amazing to outsiders that can actually happen.
I'm not sure I want to comment on priests believing God or not, but you could argue that an important part of this is that the Danish Church is part of the articulation of Danish national identity, and they are actually not only clergymen for God, but also clergymen for Danish identity. And that could be a very reasonable explanation, I think.
Any more comments or questions? Otherwise, let's thank Brian for the lecture.